So I'm very, very strong supporter of apprenticeship. I think Alberta has the strongest apprenticeship program in Canada, bar none, probably in the world. And the reason that it does have is because we have strong support from employers, strong support from government, and strong support from the institutions. We have a very, very strong institution network. We'd just like to qualify my role here. At an institutional level, and I will speak on behalf of the institutions, so really happy to see that our colleagues from Keyano College are here as well, because both our institutions have had some experience in heavy equipment operation training. Of course, Keyano with heavy equipment operation training programs that they've offered. And at NAIT, we offer crane and hoisting apprenticeship programs at NAIT as well. So we do have some experience in those areas. But at the institutional level, I just need to let you know that our role is really is not to tell you what you need, that's for sure. I mean, our role is to really listen to industry. All of our institutions have advisory committees made up of industry members that provide us input with regard to what the outcomes of these programs should be. What sort of skills, knowledge, and attitudes should graduates of our programs have to be able to fill your needs? So it's not our role to actually tell you what we need to teach. We need to listen, and that's kind of our role here as well. The agenda for this particular talk will be revolve around the state of apprenticeship training in Alberta. Now that, I'm going to focus that on the apprenticeship, on the institutional side. You know, what does that mean for institutions? So we'll look at the number of indentured apprentices, current numbers, and the current trends in apprenticeship and skills development. And then look at what sort of impact that has for the technical training institutions in the province. Because really, when you're looking at the heavy equipment operator training, I heard training mentioned an awful lot as we went around the table. So if we're talking training, it seems to me that there may be a desire to have a commitment on behalf of the institutions to get engaged. And so you need to know where we are at this point in time. So we'll talk about the number of eligible apprentices in the system, our training system capacity right at the moment, and then I'll talk a little bit about the NAIT scenario and where we're at. NAIT is the largest apprenticeship trainer in Alberta. We train about 50% of apprentices in the province at this point, which makes us the largest apprenticeship trainer in Canada because Alberta trains more journeymen than any other jurisdiction. So we're pretty experienced at apprenticeship training at NAIT. So, and then finally, of course, once you kind of know what the situation is, then we want to look at what the challenges are for institutions in the province. And so that's where we'll go. We'll spend a little bit of time with some question and answer and conclude the presentation. Again, these numbers come from apprenticeship and industry training. Most current numbers we have is for May 31st, 07. The number of indentured apprentices in the province are 64,126. That is an absolute record for indentured apprentices in the province. It's phenomenal. It's grown exponentially over the last number of years. I don't think any of us in the system really understood how rapidly this was going to grow. And I think there's a reason for that. The reason is that employers, the reason that employers are indenturing apprentices in record numbers is that they're starting to recognize that we have to grow our own. And I think that's why this group is kind of gathered here today, is that we've got to grow our own. And I think the other thing that's happened that I think is really a positive is that I think the optics of a career in trades has changed as well. Certainly, I think in the past, parents and children really had an optics of the trades as being second class. And sort of, you know, it certainly was the situation when I was exited high school. Why would you want to go into a trade, was the question. Because I had university entrance level academics, so why the heck would you want to go into a trade? And I think that's changing in that I think that people are sort of seeing that that trades are a very viable career option. As a matter of fact, at NAIT we've done a 5-year out study, and we've found all of the completers at NAIT, and that includes 2-year diplomas, applied degrees, certificate programs, and apprenticeship completers. So those people that reach journeyman status. Those journeymen make more money. They start more businesses, and they employ more people than any other completers at NAIT. So they have a huge impact on our economy. I think we all know that. I mean, we've all seen, you know, independent mechanics that work out of their own trucks, welders, and so on. My wife is a tradesperson, has a very, very successful business, has 30 employees. So they have a huge impact. So I think the optics of the trades is changing, and that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. The numbers are a little bit daunting, though, for us in the institutions. Current trends, new apprentices are being indentured at an average of 85 per working day. So, and it looks like that these numbers are not going to abate anytime soon. I was talking to one of the training managers for one of the larger heavy equipment distributors. He indicated to me that they've recognized also that we've got to grow some journey people. And so they're moving towards a 1-to-1 ratio of apprentices to journeymen, which will predicate a recruitment that will cause them to bring in approximately 300 apprentices into their organization. Talking to some other folks that are in big projects, we're actually investigating some on-site training for a major contractor that's doing a large project outside of Edmonton. They want to have on-site apprenticeship training there, and because the oil company that they're working for has said, your workforce will have a ratio of 20% of your workforce will be apprentices, because most of those big jobs, I mean, they're looking for journeymen, you know, because they don't want to take that time to work their journeyman to instruct that apprentice. So there's a huge focus on apprenticeship training right now, and it doesn't look like that's going to disappear anytime soon. Two of the biggest trades that we deal with is welding. Welding's just really been rather insane. The good news is the welding apprenticeship applications have stabilized from 2006 to 2007. They're actually down 23%, but they're still indenturing 240 applicants per month. So, you know, it just shows you that we're doing 300 a month previously. In the electrician trade, that is the largest trade. We'll be looking at 3,700 apprentices in the 2007 year. Huge numbers, for sure. So the impact on technical training providers. Well, number of indentured apprentices eligible for training in 07-08 are 38,500, and that's an approximation. So of the 64,000 plus apprentices that are indentured, 38,000 are eligible to come into school and take their technical training. And the reason that number is, you know, kind of roughly half is that about 5,500 of those apprentices are in their 9th period. That means they've taken all their technical training. They just have to put their time in trade in, and then they're certified. So they're done. But 20,000 are newly indentured and assume not to have kind of sufficient time to be eligible to get into training. We want them to have some time in the trade so that the training becomes relevant to them. But those 20,000 are not going to go away. I mean, they're still in the system, and we're going to have to deal with them eventually. So there are 20,000. And the interesting part about that, 20,000 is a large number, you know, a little under a third of the total numbers. And that indicates to us, it's something we need to keep in mind, is that the large numbers are in the entry level, are at the entry level, first and second periods of training in a trade. And so it's kind of like looking at, we're really concerned at the institutional level about the flow through, because most trades are either 3 or 4 years in duration. And so now it's kind of like those folks that were in Indonesia looking at the tsunami coming in. Not only does it have height, but it's got depth also. So now, what about that flow through coming through? So the numbers are going to, if the numbers of first period registrants continues to be high, and these high numbers of entry-level folks still pass through the system, it's going to be quite daunting to get them through the technical training. There is some attrition that occurs. You know, certain folks will indenture as an apprentice and get involved in a trade. I'm sure you see that in heavy equipment operation. Looks pretty cool to operate this big equipment, but they don't really realize what's involved, and then they say, hey, this is not for me, and drop out. But at this point in time, it looks like there are lots of willing and able folks that want to get indentured and start a career in the trade, so I think they'll backfill fairly easily. What's our capacity? That's an important consideration here. So throughout all of the institutions in the province, for the 07-08 academic year, the one coming up, there are 35,762 seats available in all trades. So if we looked at that previous page, there's 38,000 and change eligible apprentices, then that means there's a shortfall. And the shortfall is 2,300 seats. And let me tell you that the shortfall really is at NAIT. I think all the other institutions were able to accommodate all of the seat requests from AIT, but NAIT was unable to accommodate. And it's not on all trades. It's in those hot trades, welding, pipe trades. I don't think we were able to accommodate all the seats in crane and hoisting either. So that has implications for some of you folks in the audience. So now NAIT being the largest apprenticeship trainer, usually we feel the impact more immediately than other institutions at this point. And so I have to say that the observation that I have had is that the system is filling up rapidly, and I don't think we're too far away from other institutions being at maximum capacity as well. The NAIT scenario. Well, for NAIT, this upcoming academic year, we were asked for over 18,000 seats. And again, the real rise is in sort of those the usual suspects, welding, electrician, pipe trades, heavy equipment technician, millwright, machinist, those kinds of trade areas. That's where the real growth area is. We were only able to accommodate 15,888 in 33 trades. The reality of it is that these numbers indicate that NAIT is operating at about 200% over its commitment level capacity right at the moment. Commitment level capacity refers to the amount of seats, apprenticeship seats, that we can offer based on our base grant from advanced education. So how are we doing that? Well, just the way you guys do it. When you have, when you got a lot of work to do and short time to do it in, right? We do it by shifting. So in our welding, for example, we have 2 shifts currently. They start at 7 in the morning and 9 in the morning. Another shift comes in. We flip-flop our labs and theoretical training so that we can get better utilization of our facilities. We provide staggered starts for classes so that we can start a class a week or 2 weeks after the start of another class so that we can kind of stagger and get some efficiencies on facility usage. And we were fortunate that we were able to develop some additional facilities that increased our capacity. The implementation of the NCAT initiative. NCAT stands for the NAIT Center for Apprenticeship Technologies. And what it did for us is it provided us with funding from Alberta Infrastructure to build the buildings so that we could increase capacity in millwrights, instrumentation, welding, boilermaker, and the iron worker was the other group that we initially were able to increase our capacity. Well, the cascade effect when we build new facilities allowed us to rejig the vacated facilities and increase our capacity in machinist, power engineering, and the electrician program as well. So we were able to sort of at least get to the 15,881 level. So at this point in time, on the trade side of it, we're capped. We just, unless there's some increase in capacity, or increase in delivery methodology, there's no way we can handle any more. And that's a concern, something for you to think about for sure. The real restriction in the system is, and I think it's really a factor that's been, that's affected the success of apprenticeship training. The reason that apprenticeship training in Alberta is so strong is because technical training is a combination of theoretical training and hands-on learning. So certainly we provide technical concepts, but then we give them application. Now, our students, for the most part, are tactile learners. They've got to get this stuff in their hands. At the end of the day, your expectation is that these students were able to do something and not just think about something. They have to do something. So, for example, welding is a hand skill. If they don't get practice in those welding booths, they're unable to do it. Not every welder works with every process that's expected of them by the Provincial Apprenticeship Committee in the province. So we need to provide them with that working time. As we move into heavy equipment operator training, that's obviously true. I mean, in my former life as a heavy equipment technician, it was just a joy to watch a really proficient operator. I mean, they're a beautiful thing to watch, you know, but that takes an extreme amount of skill and lots of experience. You know, I was good enough to be able to sort of do the operational checks as a kind of as a mechanical kind of guy, but I never considered myself to be an operator. Holy mackerel. I mean, I saw some really beautiful operators. However, I saw the other side also and had to repair their sort of the results of their work, you know. So I can understand your challenges there. But the real strength of the training is going to be that hands-on side of it. You know, you can read all the books in the world, but at the end of the day, you got to do something if you're in a skilled trade. Full-time programs, you can't kind of leave them out because there's a huge demand for them as well. Mechanical engineering technologists, materials engineering technologists, power engineers, I can't produce enough of them, but we're capped there also. Pretty much our full-time programs are flatlined. We just don't have the infrastructure to be able to increase those numbers. So, and as of June 11th, we're oversubscribed there as well for 4,000 seats. We've got over 8,000 applications, so 2 applications for every seat in our full-time programs. Okay, now here's what we all came to talk about, or what I want to share with you are some of the challenges, and I think they're probably pretty self-evident. The challenge is that the majority of apprentices are enrolled in either first or second period of apprenticeship training. So we're concerned about that flow through. We're just starting to see the leading edge of the tsunami right now. And how are we going to deal with that flood that's behind that? And I wish I had the answer for that right now. And we're working very closely with AIT and with our industry folks to see how we can deal with that. The increased number of new apprentices shows no sign of abating. So not only the flow through, but man, we got people being indentured all over the place. So numbers are a big concern of ours. The other issue is that from our experience, the most efficient method of apprenticeship training is block release. And what I mean by block release is that that apprentice leaves the job site, comes to our institution, spends 6 or 8 weeks, or the duration of that fixed amount of time prescribed by apprenticeship and industry training, takes the training in traditional methods, traditional classroom-led, instructor-led classroom training, activities in our shops and labs that are guided by our instructional staff. And what I mean by most efficient is it's not most efficient for you as an employer, for sure, because that employee is off the job for that length of time. It's the most efficient for us. And what I mean by that is that we get the greatest pass rate. So the greatest completion rate. That means that a student entering a particular course of study successfully completes it. Because we've looked at alternative methods of apprenticeship delivery, and there's a number of them. And some of them have show signs of promise and have been in place for a number of years. Others, we've done pilot projects and with varying degrees of success. We have an initiative called CBAT, and that's competency-based apprenticeship training. What that is, the students still come on site, so that means that they still have access to instructional staff, to counseling, to all those things that reside within the NAIT infrastructure. But it's a fixed entry, variable exit. So the students have a certain amount of latitude to move through the program at their own rate. So some of those folks that are pretty bright can roll through it in an 8-week program in 6 weeks. And so that kind of provides some efficiencies as well. We've done on-site training and are investigating more on-site opportunities. So for some of the bigger contractors on some of the bigger jobs, they're requesting that we provide the apprenticeship training right on the site. And we'll do that 1 day a week or 2 days a week, but we'll negotiate what that will look like. And of course, we have to have that approved by apprenticeship and industry training as well. So we're looking at on-site training. We do actually distance delivery, kind of a form of on-site as well. Actually, on-site we do with Alpac up in Athabasca. We do the hands-on training right at the plant. They've kind of upgraded their facilities so that we can do all the tasks. We have a NAIT date model, which is a form of distance delivery where the students take their theory at home, but there's a video conference component where they can interact with an instructor to kind of deal with some of the tougher concepts so they can get that clarified. And then they do their hands-on on the job. So they have to be mentored by a journeyman. They have to have time off the job to practice, those kinds of things. And then we have NAIT in Motion trailers. So they're a 53-foot trailer with dual slide-outs that offers 1,000 feet of training. They're really jigged up for welder, steam fitter, pipe fitter, machinist. We can do a number of trade areas out of these trailers, so we can move them right on site. We've used them for Aboriginal training in a number of areas, so we can actually take the apprenticeship training right on the reserve. It's certainly a challenge for some of us to get good instructional staff. Our instructional staff have to be experienced in the area in which they instruct, obviously. You know, that's a challenge. I mean, certainly a teaching certificate doesn't do much for you if you're going to teach a heavy equipment operator. So you need to have been there, done that, and that's what the strength of that is. And of course, in today's environment, when we're dealing with high wages, we certainly can't pay at the level of industry at this point in time. So the recruitment of good, qualified instructional staff is a challenge. And of course, the cost of delivery is considerable as well. This is not cheap training. Apprenticeship training is not cheap training. Think about welding and all of the welding rod and steel and welding gases and all of those things that are involved. Just the power. I mean, our new welding facility over on the south side, we have 5 labs of 30 welders going pretty much around the clock almost. It's probably more welding goes on there than any other facility in probably Western Canada. So I'd like to have half the power bill for that operation. So it's very, very expensive. The most expensive apprenticeship program by far is crane and hoisting. There's no doubt about it, because we have to work with small groups. It's one-on-one in most instances, you know, to provide the skills development that's required. And of course, the machinery and the maintenance is very expensive. Marty, you would know that. You know, it's a real challenge. And of course, it's very space intensive, you know, to maintain appropriate clearances around the machinery when we're doing field exercises. So it's very expensive. So these kinds of things need to be looked at. As you're investigating training opportunities for heavy equipment operator, you need to take that into mind. You know, what sort of resources, how much is this going to cost us to develop a good, proficient, entry-level heavy equipment operator? What sort of equipment do we need? What sort of maintenance is going to be required at the institutional level to make this viable? So those are some of the things that I would challenge you to think about. And with that, are there any questions? What about training over the summer months? We have done that in a number of trade areas. This year we're doing training in heavy equipment technician apprenticeship over the summer. That will be that's a bit of a pilot just to see how these courses will fill. Because you know, coming from a heavy equipment background, I didn't really want to let many of my apprentices go over the summer months in the heat of construction season. So we're concerned about that. The other issue is around human resources at the institution. So we talked about the challenge at the institution to hire good qualified instructional staff. What we found is that instructors, for the most part, come to NAIT for a lifestyle change. They come to NAIT, and I'm sure other institutions as well, so that they can kind of be, watch their kids grow up. They're not all over the province. They're not working shift work. If they wanted to do that, they would go into industry and make the big bucks that they're paid out there. Because I can't pay at that level, right? If all of a sudden I'm trying to attract instructional staff, and I say, oh yeah, you got to work over the summer. We're going to do shift work. We're open 24/7. Then the sort of attractiveness of working at NAIT disappears. Why wouldn't I go out in the industry and do that for twice the money? So that's kind of the situation we're in right there. You're correct. There's more investigation and more working with institutions around the province, and we have strategic planning initiatives to sort of investigate how we're going to do this. Because at the end of the day, we got to do it, right? I would agree with you 100%. We're actually seeing the result of that now. Certainly apprentices that come in now don't have the good levels of experience that they have had in the past. And it's just due to the high levels of activities on the job. You're absolutely right there, for sure. And it creates some challenges for our instructional staff. The other challenge for our instructional staff is that we're doing analysis of their essential skills. Their skills to be able to be successful as a student. So what's their literacy, their numeracy, you know, those kinds of things that will allow them to actually read and understand some of the material that they have to go through. I mean, let's face it, trades and, I mean, I look at the equipment that you folks are working with now. Man, I'm telling you, it's head and shoulders over what I worked on when I was in a mechanic. My goodness sakes, the advent of electronics and electrohydraulics and microprocessor controlled systems is just amazing. You know, it's fantastic, but you know, some of the things that these operators and mechanics and technicians have to deal with, certainly a lot different nowadays. And so to teach some of those concepts now to someone who has maybe some literacy challenges really tasks our instructional staff, there's no doubt. There's certainly some opportunity to do that. I mean, if they can train pilots that way, certainly we can train heavy equipment operators and crane and hoisting folks. We haven't really found a really good crane and hoisting one. We really are looking hard. If you guys know of a good simulation that we can get some efficiencies with, we'd be open to that. I mean, I've operated I've sat in the 797 simulator up at Keano, and man, that's about as realistic as you can get. But at the end of the day, they still have to sit in that seat. I don't want to fly in a plane that the pilot has been strictly trained on a simulator, but boy, it can sure shorten the seat time up, that's for sure. So yeah, I agree with you. We're actually looking at purchasing a number of simulators for our rig technician program, and it's on well control and that kind of thing. So so that we can, you know, that program was kind of designed to be more theoretical, but you know, how do you sit a student down that's worked on the floor of a rig and is an active person for 6 hours a day and not give them some activities and give them some reinforcement activities? So we're not into that. We want to maintain the quality of the program. So simulators, I think, have got some real potential. They're very expensive, and they're very expensive to keep current. So as technology changes in this machinery, you got to update those simulators. So at this point in time, we don't have the resources yet to kind of get really heavily into them. But I think it shows some real potential for sure. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I hope this was of some value and gives you something to mull over in your deliberations. Thanks so much.